Thank you.
And do you want me to come down to the table?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Okay.
We're okay.
Did you get a copy, did you get the minutes I sent out? Sorry, they were
I
late.
read them on my phone, yeah.
Okay, I'm just like,
That
had a
reminded
crazy
me,
busy weekend and I'm like,
that reminded me that I needed
Pardon?
to,
You may use that.
to email Mary Beth, so I did that, right after I got your minutes.
I would
know,
say we're
sometimes it
sure you
helps.
won't walk
Like,
away with it, but guess what? I had it, so how much is, oh, that means, in fact, that was the one I had, but we're okay.
These are the ones that Monica puts up front so people can see them.
I know, and I stole it just for that reason, no. The floor is yours, Madam Chairman.
That's what my agenda said. All right, I'm gonna call this meeting of Public Health and Safety Standing Committee of May 28th to order. And the only guest who's not much is Chief Schrock. Oh, and the mayor, we'll include the mayor.
yeah.
The minutes, I assume that you were happy with the minutes?
Yeah, did,
So was I, so
move to approve?
move to approve and second, and so the minutes are good. Reviewing the safety budget.
Yes, I just kind of wanted to be able to, sit down with the chief on this budget, because, you know, we'll be the ones at the end of the day approving it and, having to, but I was there any extra money to put in for grant writing? Or how,
So the budget that we've handed out right now, so that you are aware, the department head's got 3 copies.
okay,
Basically, the one thing that I did pick up initially from the train, actually, I'm gonna leave that on just in case, is you start out with last year's budget.
right,
You take last year's finishing number as a start, that's a given.
right,
It's a given that it must be balanced. So what we did, with that information in mind, we have then recalculated the salaries at 3 different levels.
okay,
A 3% raise across the board, a 4% raise, which is in the union contract, discussions, meaning it's not done yet. They actually want to bump the bookends up to like 6. I don't see any way that's feasible to happen. And a 4% plus an additional $1. Now, this is primarily based on public works conversations, not the police conversation.
4% plus what?
Plus $1. They actually, in their union contracts, they thought they were out of line and wanted an additional $1.50 for each of the next subsequent 3 years to get them in line. So far, the study in the reserves for public works, we have not completed it with the police department yet, is that they are not as out of line as they might have hoped / thought they were. In fact, we were the second highest of the cities we looked at, with only Livingston being slightly ahead of us. So I do not anticipate that that is going to change in the results. At this point, what was handed out and what was included in the packet, so that's the 3 the department has got.
okay,
The one that is included in the packet is the 4% only. So with that, we are, I want to say 63 is the number that comes to mind over. And what I've done is we've given it to the department heads and said, you tell us, here's, and it's still not finalized, but this is basically, here's, like I said, there's the 2 givens. Tell us where to cut the budget, and it's basically going to be a percentage across the board. If you can't find the cuts, we will. But we're giving the department heads their individual, their first prerogative of where they might like to modify their budgets. Part of that we're fixing with the missing staff position, because that money hasn't been spent and won't be spent unless we hire that additional staff position, which we're still sorely in need of, but job number 1 is we've got to make the budget balance.
What do you mean staff position, you mean?
So there was a full-time position that Courtney was in that we are looking to fill, and after watching the few for several months, I'm still of the opinion what we're looking for is that city admin type position. Yeah, so those 2 come from 2 different pools. They either come up through a planning track or they come up from a finance track. Of the 2 that are easier to outsource, planning function is easier to outsource piecemeal, and so that's what we've done. So I'm looking at that position more as a finance position, and a finance city administrator is the position we're
And
looking
depends
at.
more on our outsourcing for planning.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. There's a zoning administrator, which right now Brian is the front end of that. Everything comes into planning and Brian sorts that out. Some of that is sign permit, some of that is building permit, some of that needs to go to planning, and he's parsing out. Some of it is we need to pull in police for enforcement of certain things. So right now, the what's the word I'm looking for? Compliance officer, that's not the, ordinance compliance is basically split between me, Brian, and the chief's team as needed,
Okay.
so that it comes in there. So then the position is, we're looking at hiring a finance person. However, I've got to solve a few other problems before I commit us to that.
Yeah, and I understand that.
So then coming to the budget,
Yeah,
we did go have a conversation with the school board, and the conversation there that we'd like to do is we'd like to be able to bring that person on. There's a little bit of question of timing, because ideally you'd like to bring them on with the first of the year, and there's some ramp-up time and stuff that's there.
so you and the chief met?
Yeah, we met with the school board president, and basically our conversation was, you can have as much of one as you're willing to pay for, because their initial proposal was, we want to pay for half and get 3/4.
Right.
And it was like, we just don't have the budget to do that. Now, one of the things that's a little bit scary from a budget standpoint, and police are probably the most impacted by that, I think we're gonna be okay this year. But long-term, we've got to, and Jody, you already know this from your conversations last year, it's a matter of how we tell the story. There's a possibility that part of how we fix our current problem is we cut our staff numbers. Now, at this point, zero plan to cut, but if we were to lose somebody right now, I would be very inclined, this is across the board, to say, let's operate without that position for a while rather than backfill the position.
Without the finance, the one you're looking at, filling the planning and finance?
Well, that one's, like I said, I'm already holding off, but like, let's suppose somebody in Public Works left.
Oh, yeah,
Let's not backfill the position.
right.
Police is the most impacted by virtue of the fact that it's 100% general as far as staff goes. And so that's kind of so this is not just staff. I think, is this the one from Lonnie?
Yeah, she did.
It's oriented differently. So this is, I'm assuming, the 4%. Yeah, this is the 4% in it. So this is one that we handed out to the department heads.
So that has the 4%, not the 4% plus a buck.
Correct. I really flat out, as we're doing this, I don't see I don't see it's justified. Now, having said that, we haven't done the comparisons.
No, I
in
just
the
want to
pitch
make
yet.
sure I'm understanding correctly, because the police union was last year. So this buck, is it for the police again, or is it for the public works?
So the police, our belief is, and we haven't validated this with the data yet, as we have on the public works side, and the answer was no, the data doesn't back it. The chief's initial feeling was that we need to do a one-time buck across the board to
Okay,
get everybody to an appropriate spot.
okay.
We need to finish building out the data.
So it's for everybody, it's not just,
So
For
there's
one
actually, so there's
department.
two different discussions.
okay. I just
We
wanna
have
understand it.
two unions. We
Okay,
have the
yeah.
police department union,
Right,
and we have everybody else union.
okay,
It's the everybody else union who is requesting $1.50 per over the next 3 years, so 3 times, so $4.50 over the next 3 years. They're within 3% of Livingston, which is the highest. So that's just not justified. I do not yet have the data that I'm aware of that shows that for the police department yet.
okay.
So we need to do that. The chief's initial thought was that we're $1 low. To me, that's $15,000 on a department-wide basis, which is a rounding error. And we need to come up with $15,000 as opposed, which would be ultimately cheaper than having to rehire and replace somebody if we lose them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Retention is significantly less expensive than retaining.
absolutely,
So that's,
especially in a
But-
law enforcement
Now,
position.
you said that the union for everybody else wants 4% plus a buck.
they want bookends to 6% plus $1.50. That's their ask.
Yeah.
It's not agreed to. The police have reopened their contract for wage-only discussions.
Okay.
So there's, every 3 years, they open up the whole contract,
Right.
but then they also have the option of opening it for budget purposes. And so while we have not met with the police force yet, that conversation has been opened for
On the
wages
everybody
only.
else, and now you said that the police were pretty much in line with almost Livingston.
no, Public Works.
Public works,
Public Works is,
no,
Yeah.
our police department,
What about everybody else?
we don't have the.
I'm in the process of backing and validating
Yeah,
that.
because
So
some
we're
of the
doing that
numbers that
across all the
I've seen
positions.
for our office staff seems really, really high. And the idea of giving them an additional raise when it looks like they've gotten 10 and 12 and 14% over the last 3 years, that seems ridiculous.
So there are 2 or 3 positions that have come up, and I can offer a little bit more insight to that. One of them that's certainly getting the public airplay is the library position. And by the way, all this information is public information. So as we
Right.
build these sheets and get them flushed out data-wise, the plan is that we'll post those so that it's all out there. That's,
Yeah.
it's public information, and everybody is entitled to ask
Everybody
and
asks,
to know.
yeah, they can have that.
So-
They don't have it, we don't have it yet where we could give them, but it's something we should have available.
Yeah, and the problem to me for everybody else is maybe Public Works is fine, but some other positions are not. But you have to do everybody?
So
You
there's,
can't like pick and choose?
there's 2 parts to this. So A, we were told specifically, because the way that I would do this in the private world is I would give a department a budget. I would say, Chief, you have 3.5%, distributed accordingly.
Right.
In Public Works and in union, that's really tricky. So there's 2 reasons of trickiness. One is just the policy. So for instance, let's say we're gonna give everybody a raise except X, you got a raise last year. You don't get a raise this year. There's the policy and just pissing people off. But there's also a lot of it built into the union that says, and we don't have it written as what's literally called a Me Too clause. I think there's much more of a perception that we have a Me Too clause, which means if you give it to somebody, it has to go all the way across the
That,
board.
and that's what our prior mayor was,
And
I believe, saying last year when she was trying to negotiate the police budget, she would have liked to have given them a higher raise, but then she said, I'll have to give everybody else one too.
And that has certainly been presented by some key members of our staff. The feedback I'm getting from the league is that's not entirely true, but then you're falling back on the policy decision. So part of the reason that I'm giving department heads their budgets is so that they can come back with those suggestions, and hopefully, even if they come back with the same answers, it's their idea that they're pushing downstream rather than ours.
So, I guess back to the original question then is that at this moment then, it's up to the department heads then to determine how they want to spend the budget internally. You're not giving them
They're-
any extra for like grant funding, you know, you're not gonna just add to their budget for that. It would
Okay.
have to come out of their existing budget.
And where
That
would
what you're
grant
saying?
funding come from?
So at this point, we do not have, I have asked a couple of different folks, who have grant writing capability. Again, that's something that extra staff person may well have the capacity to do. But right now,
Whatever new hires
we
you
could,
have.
yeah,
for that.
but that could be an outsourced position. So if they come back, if Chief Schrock comes back and says, I want to put 10 grand in to have somebody write a grant or something, we have several people who have those capabilities. I would say police department right now in our budget is probably the trickiest one still out for a couple of different reasons. One, they're the largest.
Yeah.
2, we are still working off the suspicion that we are behind the curve. We need to validate that.
Yeah.
And 3, in one sense, we could easily add a school resource officer and yet another officer as an investigator and be there. On the flip side of that, if you go back and look at the numbers, you can argue that we've had one more staff than we could afford for many years. But taking it away is,
Well, one more step
I
we
get
can
Steve
afford
guy.
versus what we need are not, they're butting heads.
restate again?
One more staff, more than our budget can handle, but we actually need, with what's going on in our town, two more, with a resource officer and an investigator.
Bingo.
So there's like, they're not, it's butting heads with each other, it's totally contradicting, they're two totally separate.
Absolutely. And so now we have the, how do we have the public conversation of, do we raise taxes? Do we do a specialty fund? Or do we do what West Yellowstone does and say resort tax can pay for that? And that's the stuff that I'm trying to build in charts, so again, that we can compare. Because ultimately, it needs to be, to an extent, to be successful, it needs to be certainly a citizen-backed change.
It's a, Chief, did you have something?
He's been kicking me under the table the whole time.
No. My vision with the investigator is to, put one of my existing officers into that position
Right.
and hire out to absorb the workload for his spot. And then the school, I'm looking at 75-25 for
Right.
the SRO. So it's like, I'm not
One
trying
and, one and a quarter.
to, correct, yeah. I'm not trying to get too.
No, I realize that, yeah, no, I'm just saying, because the school really does need a resource officer.
They
are
do,
way
and I-
past that.
When the mayor and I met with the superintendent, and I kind of, expressed my belief that 3/4 of the year, I truly feel that it should be a 75-25 type of MOU deal.
Absolutely.
He didn't bat an eye at it. I'm preparing to go there, I believe it's June 5th, to a school board meeting and just kind of, I guess, not really do a huge presentation, but answer questions about the responsibilities of the SRO. And they're very interested, and they do want to get the ball rolling, so hopefully.
Well, and there is, I mean, that's just it, there's grant money out there to hire a full-time school resource officer. That's one of the main grants out there under
Yeah.
that COPS
But
program.
it doesn't last forever, is the
No,
issue.
no, it doesn't, but you just keep reapplying for it. And there's a lot, I mean, they say you can't staff with grants, but there's a lot of nonprofits that staff with grants.
Did you remember, is that part of where they're coming up with it, was a grant from their side?
No, they have a safety budget that they utilize, and the number one conversation they've had and the number one idea that I think they all agree on is the utilization of an SRO, not only for that school, but it's the responsibility. And they first were kicking it around when I spoke to them, like, well, we could try it out part-time. Well, it would be nice, however, it's not really a part-time job being responsible for 3 schools.
I was gonna say 3 schools,
Yeah.
one
during the
person.
time. And just add a little color to that, when they said they didn't bat an eye, we kind of had already briefed them going into it. You can have whatever you're willing to pay for as the conversation. And
Yeah.
so,
But
while they had hoped for, and I certainly don't blame them for asking, it was just from a budget standpoint, we're already pushing against the edges. So the thinking is we can get by with what we have right now, plus that new SRO, which is basically a quarter of a head count, weighted head count increase.
Right.
Their concern is they want to make sure that that position, looking at it from their budget side, is the entry-level position, which may or may not be who ends up there. So in other words, if you have officers from an $80,000 to $100,000 weighted salary position, they want the 80, even though in fact, they may be getting the one who's making 87 or 92. And that's still in discussion stage.
And we would have to hire for that position.
I'll let the chief speak to the method of how we do that.
Sure. So what my plan is to have an open application, it has to be posted within the city first. Internal applicants from my department are able to apply. I don't have many that are qualified nor are interested in the position. So more than likely, from what I'm seeing right now, it would have to be an external hire. But
That includes all the training, unless,
fortunately, there is a lot of interest from officers, prior officers that are already academy trained and worked within the school districts as a public information officer and teaching classes and stuff like that.
One of my understandings was we wanted that position to not be, that position we didn't feel was really, could be a new person either. It had to be somebody who already had experience.
So that's true.
That'd be
That's the
preferable.
other thing too, is I have no issues with hiring a 21-year-old man or woman for the position of a police officer, because all that training comes with the academy. And, you know, when they're set free and they're off on their own, they're competent, and they have to pass a variety of tests and examinations and a 3-month field training process. I wouldn't feel comfortable personally putting somebody that is completely green with absolutely zero life or street experience into a role where they're responsible for children's safety. You know what I mean? I want somebody in there that's seasoned and reliable. So,
And experienced and.
a lot of experience,
A lot of
because, I mean, child safety is paramount. I think we can all agree on that here.
Absolutely.
Like maybe a retiree or someone?
No, because that's also another dangerous thing, is a lot of times people will look at a school resource officer position as a retirement gig. But then again, do you want somebody that is on autopilot, slow-moving, responsible for children's safety? Absolutely not. It needs to be a squared-away man or woman that is willing to do the job. They're tactically sound, they can relate to students, they can relate to families, and they can relate to school staff. It has to be somebody that's squared away and energetic and proactive. Not that was a conversation, and it has happened in the past. You know, I have some friends that are retired that were SROs, and I asked them how the gig was, and I go, oh, it's great, I just sat around all day. Well, that's not what I'm looking for, you know,
Yeah.
and I guarantee that's not what the school is looking for.
Correct. And so part of it is, there's a benefit of having an SRO out there in that the community, or more specifically, the cowards and folks who are worried about, are aware of what's there. We want them to know that they're going up against the best and the finest, not the kid just out of school or the person who's on retirement. And heaven forbid that if something ever happened, you don't want the national news coverage of the kid just out of school or the retiree. You want your finest and best
I
there.
keep thinking Uvalde. Yeah, I know.
Parkland's is a great example of
Parkland's, yeah.
people standing outside as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't there. I
don't-
can't,
No,
I'm not gonna.
And I
I'm not gonna share what
And
that
I'm
one
sure
is.
it's hectic and crazy.
But I know what I saw, and I know what my teammates would have done in that position, but it's just one of those things. You want somebody that is, ready to go, proactive, squared away, and like I said, just as importantly as, you know, proactive and squared away is being able to relate to students, because, and their families and the school staff, because they're acting as a liaison between the police department and the.
It's a PR person, yeah. There's a lot of PR
Yes,
involved.
yeah, it's somebody that knows how to use their words carefully. So,
And then going back to kind of the budget picture of this, there is a very real possibility that in order to make our police budget work this year, it's gonna require concessions and changes in other departments and areas, which is where the conversation, by the way, we're still having the fire equipment is
Yeah.
still not completely off the table. And the reduction from a mills to a percentage that's in line,
Right,
is still on the table. However, Tom's not committed to making that change until after he knows whether their mills pass on June 4th. So he will be more flexible if that passes, less flexible if it doesn't passes. We are having conversations with the auditors about and we're going back and revisiting our ordinance language to see if it says it does have to be owned by the city, and even if it does have to be owned by the city, there's a possibility what we may do is we may own some equipment that the fire department uses
already
and have
do.
an MOU with them.
yeah, we
That
are,
we have some additional stuff, I'm saying, so if we can,
we own a fire truck.
and we may own
Really?
more than that.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
but-
And so that conversation is also part of how we're looking to
Can we sell it to
address
the fire
this.
department?
don't know that it's worth much anymore. It's like a 20-year-old fire truck.
If it puts fires out, that's
Hey, if
fantastic.
they use it, it's okay.
They probably
It
give
has
us
value.
$5,000 to it.
I could already think of budget cuts within my budget that nobody would bat an eye at for myself.
That would cover the 25%,
I'd love,
25% salary.
We're not gonna
20
nail,
to 25,000.
we're not gonna nail them down at this time, but that's what all the department heads have been given. You tell us first where to make the cuts.
Yeah, well, I just,
And part of what I'm doing is I'm still fighting, I spent part of my weekend fighting with Excel, and I'm still not on the winning side of that. Because what I want to be able to demonstrate is why, when we get to raise it 1/2 of the percent of, or 1/2 the rate of inflation over the last 3 years is how much our tax basis goes up. And you've got unions saying 4% COLA, well,
so,
there's a problem right
I
off the
just
bat.
want to verify. My understanding is that we cannot use resort tax money to pay for grant writing. Is that correct? We can use it for a match.
I don't know that I know the answer to that question. I have not
I think
asked
we
that.
need to find that out, because if we can use resort tax for grant funding, we can put $20,000 resort. I mean, I'd like to put $20,000 resort tax into the police budget for grant writing. Because we are missing out on
That 20,000,
training funds, we're missing out on.
that 20,000 would also, well, even though that was a discussion that I briefly had with them there during the meeting, is not so much an employee, but of the city, which he or she is an employee of the city. But if the school is paying for 3/4 salary of an officer and we pay 1/4, could we, I don't know, could it be seen as a capital expense to not funding a position for a police department or an employee, but for a safety program in the school? I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it's a person, not a capital expense.
But it's like, he's considering the whole program though, not, that's just.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a stretch. It's an operating expense.
It's, yeah, so there's actually 4 codes that we've got by bars, staff, operating, professional services, and capital.
Mhm.
That's staff. There's really no other way you can do that.
No, but if I know we've used, resort tax as a match for, things that it fits into, like parks
Like
and,
parks or-
yeah.
I will meet with Tom later today,
Is
if I can
resort
get an
tax
answer.
for public relations? That's T-bid.
And that's targeted very specifically toward housing and
Marketing.
stuff. Like I said, this, from a budget standpoint, this is hands down our trickiest budget. And I won't pretend that we know what the answer to this is. What we've done right now is describe the shape of our problem. Now we're gonna move into the how do we solve it stage.
Yeah, adding grant funding to this budget would help a lot. Or training and for, there's just, the number of grants that they have out there is like pages and pages and pages.
Do you have a list of those, and have you shared those? Okay, don't throw those at me.
Yes, and the back page has like just, but the top one right there is for hiring an officer grant. And the back pages are just line by
I will
line
get this to
grants
you
that.
immediately, I'll scan this so that I
Okay.
can get it to me in the.
But the
Tuesday,
deadline
so
on
you
most
can
of
read it
these
the
is May and June, so, we're kind of, and did you got the email from that company where they will
Yeah,
apply for
in
you?
Great Falls. I
Yeah,
thought it was a phishing email, it scared me. I
I know.
confirmed with Lonnie that they were legit.
yeah, so
So I
I'd
did-
like to know how much they would charge, because it sounds like that's all they do is go out and apply for these grants. for
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
police departments.
communicated with him over email a few times.
Yeah,
Um,
and what do they charge to contract with them, and what's their
they didn't give me
Their
that
success-
information.
their success ratio, like, do they
Mhm.
usually get like, what's their return on what they're charging you?
Yeah,
Because, when I was talking to Mitzi, Kelly, because that's what she does for a living, she's like, yeah, if you do $20,000, you should at least get $100,000 back in grants. is what she was thinking, you know, and that's been her, you know,
What percentage of victory is that?
we think algebra personally.
Well, if you get 20 and you get 100,
Yeah, I mean, you made $80,000, so, that's, you know, but you have to apply for them, obviously, before you.
There are certain things we could tap into a drug asset forfeiture fund for. If it relates to drug enforcement, we can use those funds. That could be,
that's very limited. I know that's one that's come up historically when it was getting used for things other,
what was it being used for?
I don't, I can give you a name or two we could ask, it would tell us.
I think,
But it's just one of those that we institutionally, we need to know that that's gonna get questioned and
Oh,
make sure it stands up.
you can use drug asset forfeiture funds for radios. If it goes towards drug enforcement, you can use it for,
Training?
yes,
Oh, what did you say, I'm sorry?
Training.
yeah,
vests, training, which we still actually have money left over for a grant that we did get through the Mason Moore Foundation, God bless them. We have one more vest left in there. We're gonna be due for new ones here soon.
Meaning the ability to purchase, or we have one that's sitting on the shelf aging?
They don't age, they age when they're
Used.
used, yeah.
So our previous police chief told us that they need to be replaced every 5 years, that they age after use. I mean, as you wear them.
Correct.
They don't have to be shot at.
Right,
right,
Okay.
I could, and we wear
So
plate
it's just
carriers.
the flexing.
Yeah, we wear plate carriers now, just because bad guys like to use rifles these days. But, I mean, I could purchase a plate carrier and have it hang in our equipment room for 5 years, and then have somebody show up, and there you go.
What's a plate carrier?
We wear rifle plates within our panels that
Oh,
that
on
stop.
top of the vest,
Correct, yeah.
including the vest.
That stop rifle rounds, or supposed to, certain rifle rounds. Not everything, but every little bit helps.
Whatever you can get.
Sure, yeah, whatever you can throw in
Because I
there.
was looking at the budget, trying to figure out that a grant might cover.
Mhm.
And that's why I thought of training probably.
yeah, no, there's definitely grants for training, there's grants for,
Vehicles,
well, vehicles, Resort Texas,
what?
Resort Texas can pay for your vehicles, so. I mean, if you wanna get a grant for, you
If
can get
we-
grants
if
for
we-
equipment,
If we could get a grant for vehicle equipment elsewhere aside from resort tax, that would be awesome too.
yeah, you can, there's just line after line. after
Thankfully, the
line.
equipment that we have in our vehicles is, fairly new and reliable, and when we do have new cars, it's a matter of putting that equipment into, the newer vehicle.
One of the charts that is not done, part of, one of those Excel fighting, exercises that I'm doing is, it's not been that many years ago, like less than 5, when we were also paying for police cars
Out of general.
out of
Oh, I
general.
know.
And so part of me is, how come that hasn't bought us more years than it has? And it's just seeking to understand that.
Yeah, I know, yeah, because we couldn't do anything like that for law enforcement before.
Yeah, and we were managing it out of general. I said I had, the year I did a big budget to dispel some of the myths about how much and percentage-wise, when we put it as a percentage of our overall budget as opposed to just a percentage of the general, that was still including
But
police
you've
cars in
also-
general.
But we've also hired more staff overall that's coming out of the general. I mean, there for a while, we had a planner, assistant planner, you know, we don't have those 2 positions now.
There's actually 2 that are gone, yeah.
Yeah, and then, Monica is the new position, isn't she?
She's new since that time when we
Yeah.
did that.
I think
So, I
she's
mean,
the
that was-
newest.
And that's, I said,
Yeah.
so one of
But
the,
I think there just used to be 3.
one of the, yeah.
And not to say that they're not needed, I'm
And,
just
no,
saying,
but one of the
we've grown and we've
conversations
had to
that has
hire more
been,
people.
one of the conversations that has floated, and I think it needs to be part of that, and it's public information, is here's our staff count and where it's gone.
Yeah.
And I know that, you know, the same the same look that I know Chief Schrock gave me, even without looking, when I said if we lose somebody, not backfill it. When I had that conversation with Lonnie, it was a meaner look than what the chief gave me.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
So like I said, but
Well,
we've just gotta figure out what the reality is,
But I'd
right?
rather have someone in the office or another police officer.
well, it just, you're gonna, if you lose a police officer, then you're going to be paying overtime,
Or having less coverage.
or having less coverage too.
I can't in good conscience take coverage away from the city.
Yeah.
That,
No,
for me, it's not.
But the law says we have to have a balanced budget, or else we pay for it personally.
Well, and I
What do you
think.
mean, we?
I mean, we.
Yeah.
He's correct.
That we have a balanced budget, or the elected officials are personally liable, which translates to, we will have a balanced budget.
Okay, write my resignation right now.
No.
Wait,
Wait.
The thing is, I mean,
I didn't know that was part of it.
the culture within the department and the calls that we're responding to are very different than they were in '94.
And they're very effective, and there are some very significant things that are happening.
Yeah, we just captured another fugitive on Friday. That was in Red Lodge.
High end.
They think they can hide in this little
That's
town.
different than the photo I sent you,
Oh,
too.
this
I forgot- completely
this
different.
isn't that guy?
This is a guy that was wanted for sexual exploitation of children, and he was held up in one of our hotels. Yep. But it's just like the culture and the types of calls that we're responding to take a lot more time, investigative wise. And like I said, we've had the same amounts of staff,
In 30 years.
30 years, yep. And that's one thing that I'm looking to remedy before I retire, is have enough guys, everybody. has a
All in
meeting.
line and
This
all.
is how we're
organized.
keeping him on and keeping him from retiring.
So, I don't know, I've gotten really gray over the last 3 years, so.
You're using the Grecian for men?
Yeah, well,
Like, I put it in there.
I showed my wife a picture of me my first day as chief, and now, and she's like, woof.
I know.
Kind of like the beginning of end of presidential years.
Yeah.
How it's always this
When
massive.
when I was growing up on a, ranch in southeastern Montana, one of the old farmers,
Mhm.
the ranchers out there, his wife would put shoe polish in his hair.
Oh, yeah?
Watch shoe polish. I'm like,
Yeah. Oh, I don't care if I go gray. It's just-
Don't
I
do
knew a
that.
guy that
God
was bald
will.
in the middle and he used shoe polish to fill in the spot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, God, don't do that.
I use pomade to take some of it away. When it dries, it's pretty
Hard.
gray. Yeah.
Girl cream.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
So
so-
the answer is, this is a work in process. We know where the issue is, and I would, in my mind, this is the one that I'm the most afraid of, because I agree with the chief that we can't cut this, but we've got to figure out where we're making other cuts elsewhere.
So this includes the 4%.
This is with the 4%. I do not believe, I did not see, does this have the SRO office?
No, it's not.
This still does not include the SRO, because that's a new developing.
And like I say, there's absolutely a grant out there.
That's, yeah,
for that.
that's 20 that I'm looking for. And there are local, very generous donors out there, but I would hate to have that resource.
Yeah, we want to, so, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I just need to, since I just seen this, I want to go through it.
yeah, it was in our packet too.
There was 99 pages in the packet,
I
okay?
know.
You're welcome.
You give
Those
me one.
those used to be,
I didn't look at this, okay? I admit it.
they used to be 200.
Yeah.
I've seen them.
I admit, I didn't look at this page.
So you were saying that Monica has written some grants for you?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, if we could tap her too, in the meantime.
Lonnie's feedback is that all of her folks are tapped out, so I would rather, I like the option of finding somebody who's, and like I said, those
Okay,
conversations have
dedicated.
happened on a few different fronts with Tom, with the associate, the foundation, that staff position, which we don't have.
Right,
Okay, well,
I'm gonna have to take the grant writing course.
has Monica been successful in grant writing?
Prior mayor wrote one, was successful, we're waiting to hear back on one or two that Monica's written. I believe one of them was for portable radios. I can touch base with her and see where we're at on that, if anywhere.
They didn't have enough commas in them, if that was your question.
Yeah.
Well, we know that.
I have follow-up that we will have some specific conversations with Tom, on whether on the resort tax.
Okay. Okay,
He's just a little busy between now and the 4th.
I don't know why.
He has
Did we
made
know that
this
there was gonna be a parade, yesterday? That was
There's
on-
always a parade yesterday.
It was on,
It was almost a block
So
long.
I did, and I will concede embarrassment, because when the gentleman who called me, who wanted to, I said, which parade? And we've always had one, and I got that from,
Well, the thing is, I'm gonna be touching base with him today in person, because he called one of my sergeants and started screaming at him for, something that my sergeant had no idea
It
about.
was a block long. That is 3 times bigger than it has been.
I'll talk to him today.
Yeah.
the.
I drove up here yesterday and went there to speak with him in person, he
I
wasn't there.
missed it. I walked outside.
I have his
Saw that.
contact, and
So do
I gave him a letter to have in case an officer approached him, so I said, here, keep a copy of this.
Don't you have to
But-
have a event?
We don't, so it was basically, I looked at it as the same thing as the St. Patty's Day, was the conversation. In fact, but I included you on those emails early on. You may or, I'm guessing you didn't see them, but the initial emails Thursday and Friday you were on.
Oh, that was the last minute.
Yeah, I got an email from him on Saturday.
Okay.
And I was not in the office.
No, and then I had sent you out an email on Thursday and Friday, or whichever day it was that
Yeah, I'm
he
not in the office on Friday.
originally reached out, so.
It's not your fault, I'm not.
It's my fault.
Well, no,
Let's be clear.
it's not that. I was more wanting to talk to him about the way.
The interaction between the two?
Sure, yeah.
Sandy, I was, at the Elks yesterday, because we feed the veterans, and somebody said, how come they don't have a permit? And another guy said, you see the Jeep with the machine gun? That's their permit.
Yeah, well, like I said, normally it's like 4 guys. This time it was almost a block
The
long.
weather was nice.
We still missed it.
Yesterday was
I still
perfect,
missed
yeah.
it.
Perfect.
And they were doing some big, so I apologize. What I'll do is I will reach out and go, but I said, I just had CC'd you to those, and I also added Sherry Weimer. I basically wanted him to coordinate with her as well. Just because they were doing some video to show her hospitality in front of us, hopefully.
Well, thankfully, my hat's off to the Montana Highway Patrol. One of the detachment troopers was in the area yesterday and helped my day shift guy.
The vehicle that
Yeah,
was following,
ultimately.
I don't even know what kind of vehicle that was. It was like.
But I had the same response as, we have a parade on Memorial Day, which I thought.
I told you, yeah, they're all 4 of the guys holding the flag, Harry Holman
did.
for sure, in his uniform,
yeah,
okay?
they all dress in their uniforms, the ones that can still fit in it.
And it made all the sense, but I also,
It's true.
but I also understood why I missed
I can
it.
fit my
It's kind of
uniform
the-
and they go out.
There's no announcement, it just happens.
No, it was on the flyer.
No, I'm just saying, there's no announcement,
my way there.
it's happening right now. Usually 4th of July parade, you hear the siren and
Yeah.
everybody
Oh, yeah.
knows that there's a parade
Oh.
coming.
Well, when we were leaving, my daughter was upset with me too, that I didn't take her to the parade. And I said, I'm sorry.
I know, they just said you don't throw out candy, honey.
Yeah.
They also had a flyover over Broadway.
My dad, lives right up at, my mom and dad, they live right up there in the golf course area, and he's like, they were level with it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, but that wasn't during the parade, that was pre-parade.
Right, they did
Ah.
fly over before.
They flew over, but not during the parade, or we might have thought, oh, something's going on, but no.
Yeah,
It
no, well,
wasn't during the
they
parade.
had flyers all over town that had the schedule, and it said right there,
They
10:30
did have a
Memorial
flyer,
Day.
But it didn't
Parade.
start at 10:30, because I had people come into my
Yeah,
office.
it
I wish I
did.
would've left a
I-
little earlier to catch it.
I made a bad assumption because it happened every year, the chief of police was in on it, and I was the only one who was in the dark, so.
Because you're
I don't
new.
think I dealt with it last year.
I think they probably
Okay,
have,
well, I think that we
actually.
can
Anyway,
probably.
so we'll do that, and please feel free, and I will take whatever
No, it's not.
stripes are required.
All right.
But I basically handled it the same way as I did with the St. Patty's Day, which I had called up and talked to our insurance company and everything else on, so.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, whenever I'm signing the warrants payable, and I see it all the time in here, can we get some bids on some computer services? We seem to pay an awful lot of money for what we're getting.
So
But maybe
that,
I'm just, you know, I
so
mean,
that conversation it is gonna be open for discussion. So a little bit of back history is we are,
dollars for computer tech support just in the police department.
say again, I'm
It's
sorry.
in every
$12,000.
department too.
I know, $12,000 for computer tech support.
And-
just in the police department.
So the response, the change to the current company that was actually made at the behest of the last police chief, who did not like the previous company. My feedback from all of the staff in here has been they preferred the previous company. When I reached out to Chief Schrock, he did not have an indication or preference other than where we are either, so.
My admin sergeant at the start of the year, they swap every 3 months. So he has dealt more so with, Cosentus than I have. Normally for me, it's an email, with
Just-
police fixes.
Do they respond quickly? What's the response time?
I can be 3 days sometimes. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 3 days.
3
There's-
days for a computer tech issue? That's ridiculous.
Well, they'll come in and like restart our servers and like everything's working great. And then I'll go to access my front door camera when somebody's knocking on the door, and that's not working. So-
Well, see, all of that should just work all the time. You should not need a computer tech person
You just
to.
get
I,
a ring.
yeah, I wish I would've paid more attention to computer science.
So-
It's changed, doesn't matter.
Yeah, really, that's from what I was using, yeah, that's true, that's true.
No, you're not referring to
Bring your
age.
kid to work, we can.
My
do
kid,
something.
my daughter, yep, she's pretty
yeah.
We
sharp.
could get a
We
14-year-old,
have-
and they'd
we have
respond
10
a lot
minutes.
quicker.
Okay,
And you could give
So,
them, $100.
so you are revisiting
We
that? Okay.
we are revisiting that.
I just
There
noticed
was-
that we seem to pay an
Yeah.
awful lot of money to a company that,
Doesn't-
I mean, once, it should be working. We shouldn't be having these ongoing computer tech issues, and if we are,
Well, there's also, yeah,
I
so,
mean, you're in computers, you know, I mean, it's.
and that,
not-
well, and that was part of why I had pulled it up, is because that's my background. And there's a lot of stuff that's here that I just fix and address as it comes up, because, you know,
Yeah, you
I
want
don't have
to know?
anything else to do as mayor.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
You should charge.
That when we switched to Cosentus, part of the concern is that there was a significantly higher upfront cost as they transitioned, and we have not got a bid yet, but that is on the radar.
Okay.
So it should definitely be up for bid.
Pardon?
It should definitely be up for bid.
I have a copy of the,
Okay, well, we've got 10 minutes. I wanted to at least touch on the addressing. I know, we heard from Babcock and Miles, for instance, that to readdress immediately or whatever is going to drive them crazy and they're gonna lose business. They have over 200 suppliers who can't find them now. But if you do readdressing without a long notice, their suggestion, if we really felt we needed to,
12 and Oaks.
was to give them 12 months, say this is what your address is going to be. So start getting your changes done.
their new printed materials.
New printed materials, well, there's gonna be a few businesses that are impacted. Flying S Title, Babcock and Miles has those 2 locations.
So it's everybody on 12th Street that's kind of on the chopping block.
Well, and then 11.
Any businesses that face one of the cross
So
streets.
literally, we haven't even talked to the county, whether they're addressed on 11th Street or whether they're addressed on Hauser.
Whoa.
Oh, that's okay,
County, oh, the admin building.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and then you've got the, shipping place, that's the name,
Junction,
which I can never figure out why they would call it Junction 7, so I can never remember that. It makes no sense for.
they're awesome there,
Yeah, the gals are
Yeah,
great,
they are.
but we're gonna have to let them know and think of what they also have.
Mhm.
So those are just a couple of the businesses that I can think of that are really gonna be,
One of the owners worked for UPS for 20 years.
Yeah,
She'd be a good
Jenna.
one to talk to.
Yeah.
She did. and maybe we need a little more outreach before.
So I'm glad you brought it up here, because when I was on council and in the individual conversations, so a little bit of, from when we first brought this up. I have had individual conversations with police, with EMS, and with fire, and they have all universally said, yes, this will improve things.
Yeah.
I
Eventually.
think, yeah, well, relatively quickly. There was an initial, when Tom was here, a couple of feedbacks, and I still need to find out exactly which week it is, because I'd like to go read the article. He kind of felt like the way the newspaper portrayed it, that they were saying he was pushing it. So his role is he does
You talking
GIS for the
Tom Coley
county.
or
Tom Coley.
Okay.
So he does that. John Trapp did a follow-up conversation with him because one of the things that Coley had raised was kind of the phantom Center Street, meaning north, east, west.
Right.
And John talked to him, and it took about 5 minutes to get rid of that, which means you're not renumbering any houses. So now the only things you're really affecting are businesses with printed materials. There was several conversations, several conversations about, like, is it first north, second, or is it 100 north, 200 north, 300 north, 100 south, 200 south, 300 south, which I have a familiarity from just because I came in Utah. But if I told you that Jody's address was 250, what's your house number?
Mine's 718.
So if she is 718 west, 400 north, or you know exactly where she lives. She's on the 400th Street, and she's between 7 and 8, if that was there. I had asked Tom about possibilities of leaving the old signs up for a little bit. First off, we have to change the signs because we're not compliant.
Right.
So we have to spend that money anyway. So the question is, in line with what you said, they can't find us as is, because Google doesn't know how to address our system. This would solve that. And so the county came back and basically said, when you do it, let's do it jointly with the county, which is the GIS. So like if somebody builds a house right now, they get assigned an address. And that would be much simpler for all new things. My position is, I'm Switzerland, I don't care. I have an opinion, but my opinion doesn't matter. It's what council wants to come up with, or what council wants to do. I do like the idea of saying, we're doing this, it'll be happening next year, start making preparations.
Here's what your address will be, and that's where we want to go. Here's what your address will be. Is there any way to mediate changing the numbers on the businesses?
They won't. That's what John Trapp said when he went and talked to him, is
The numbers won't.
that's unnecessary. So if Broadway becomes the reference and then you've got quadrants, then there is no renumbering of the house numbers itself. The only thing that changes is the actual streets that go east and west. So rather than being 11th, it's Mount Maurice, 100 or first south, 200 or second south, et cetera.
I heard that too.
What's that, Frank?
Like somebody's being involved.
Go check. So I think that, and John Trapp has said he's very, very happy to come in and have that discussion. He's,
It's a German Shepherd, that's how they sound.
sounds like a coyote.
Yeah.
So John Trapp would like to come and speak, to the group as,
Is he the one who does the GIS?
no, Tom Coley is who does the GIS. John Trapp is actually fire, so he's
Deputy Chief.
He's deputy chief under Tom Coons.
So most of this work is being done in the public works
Yeah,
committee.
Well, there's a physical part, so that we just need to talk about, there's public safety, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and I understand why I was in public works, and then I
Yeah,
don't
because it's
disagree
a
with
public
that, but,
work, because Mike went through and he figured out where all those streets, all the signs that had to be changed, it's a public work
Never seen
committee,
that.
yeah.
yeah,
And all they're waiting for is the why we're doing it, so that they can make the recommendation to council.
For public
and,
safety.
and the why, I think, is fire, EMS, and
Right.
police. Or just general businesses saying, they can't find me as is. Napa can't get found, it still gets switched to a west. I mean, people find it because of institutional knowledge, not because our addressing system works.
Are they a Bonner or Fifth Street address?
They're actually Fourth West is their address.
But they're east.
I know.
Why would they be west?
Pardon?
Why would they be fourth west?
I
What?
don't know, I just know that whenever it goes in the system, that's what the system modifies them to.
I'd have to look it up on my computer and see what they're listed as.
You could stop by and I just
Talk to
noticed,
Andrew.
why is it west? Yeah,
Yeah.
you could talk to any of them down there.
And how does Google find out that we've changed our addresses?
I think that's the GIS system, that there's a national standard now which we don't comply with.
In the system, in your system, because I got them at 121 Fifth Street,
Does it say Fifth Street West or Fifth Street East?
Fifth Street, nothing.
It'll, when you put that in, it'll switch them to Fifth Street West, I think. But talk to him or go look at all the packets that are there. I mean, yeah, it's,
But see,
That's
even
weird.
that, Fifth Street, you've got, the whole street.
So
You
it's,
can't even cut out half of
US
it.
Postal Service is changing it to adding the west, but they're not. Their actual address is not
It's funny,
west.
they got them at 121 Fifth Street, Red Lodge, and then it's a picture of, Rocky Mountain Tire on Google, on Broadway North.
That's-
they might be a Napa store too.
They
so,
are.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Anyway.
they're Napa Care
because,
Center.
yeah, there's used to be 2 or 3, because
Yeah,
your
my
dad's
dad's.
place was in Napa. And then the other one, this is a follow-up for I sent you an email this morning. I don't, thank you, by the way, for the fast response on
Yeah.
getting the signs out.
Yeah.
By the Boys and Girls Club,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm still getting calls on the Broadway ones. Do we have those?
Potentially, I'd have to check, what intersections would they like them at?
I will leave that to your discretion, but I would
We
say
don't
the two box ends to the main 4 or 5 blocks, I think is traditionally where they've been.
Yeah.
Say what,
that's fine.
13th and then 5th?
What, are these the pedestrian crossing signs?
Yeah.
How many do you have?
2 right now that are out on the street.
Is that the only 2 we have from the umpteen thousand? Because we've had 2 or 3 or 4 right on Broadway in the past.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And people are, and like I said, and that, it's like, I got a couple of calls over the weekend, now that it's the season, can we get them done? And my response is, I've already got the request, and I know we got them up that same day over at Boys and Girls.
I think maybe 5th and 11th.
I said,
I would think
Because
further
that's,
south,
our-
I like
It gets
12th or
crammed there.
13th.
yeah, because people, it gives,
East
and
and
I,
westbound traffic turning onto Broadway.
yeah, well, and it also gives people notice when they're coming onto Broadway that there's pedestrian crossings.
It also helps foot travelers establish where the crosswalk is, because, they just go where.
But we have, we usually.
we know where they are.
We
Yeah.
usually do multiple
We
ones.
ignore that out.
Yeah, my recollection is we've normally had 3 or 4 out there.
And
But
usually
that's-
in the heavy walkable district, yeah.
Yeah, going into
The
that.
more
So
the
anyway,
better.
if we have lost it, because I want to say somebody told me we spent like 17,000 on those signs several years ago, and we've got to have more than 2 signs to show for that.
Yeah.
And then what do we have for the regular panel signs? Like something that we can put out on the front of town that says, welcome to Red Lodge, no fireworks allowed?
Yep, so we don't have anything just like regular panel. What we have done in the past is, we work very well with DES, Serena Allen. They have in the past let us use their digital sign, but one of the stipulations is it has to have something to do with disaster emergency services. So at first, it's letting people know the level of fire danger, which is DES, and then afterwards,
Okay.
fireworks within city limits are illegal, prohibited, illegal, illicit, whatever word you want to choose.
And if you just wanna say fireworks prohibited, that works too.
Fireworks prohibited, yeah.
Or no fireworks.
Just as long as, yeah, don't come into that one. I think just as long as, they know that they're prohibited within the city limits and not the county, because, I mean, like, I don't want to ruin somebody's good time that thinks that it's a countywide ban or something like that.
No, but my goal is just to make sure, and like I said, we don't have to have 100% compliance to get value out of it, but we do have I have a responsibility, if fireworks are prohibited, I have a responsibility to make sure that there's a posted. If you could call ahead, that'd help me make sure I have an officer standing by, so it'll make it easier on them.
Well, we've got one
So
minute, and the
that's
other people
Serena
aren't here
is,
yet.
so we don't have anything like that?
No, maybe Public Works, but maybe not.
So we had talked, just kind of as an aside, last year, about getting some, barriers for like when we have special events, that we
Ah, yeah,
could,
the water barriers.
yeah, that we could rent out to event holders.
Yeah.
And at that time, Bushnell didn't want to store them anywhere. He said he didn't have a place to store them, but I didn't know if that was still the case since we have Mike Nichols now. If maybe we could find a place to store them, actually have them, because that would be something Resort Tax could buy those.
And this was in the wake of Wisconsin too,
Yeah.
during the Christmas event, which
We need to wrap and start up a new meeting.
Yeah.
I know,
anywho,
yeah.
I can
But
talk.
keep that in mind,
Okay.
because we have a lot of big events that do a
Yeah.
lot of street closures and.
Do you want to
that would be
officially
nice.
close your meeting?
And we
Meeting
will
adjourned.
officially close the meeting.
You gavel?
To adjourn.
They don't give me a gavel.